The first time I met him, he was standing in my living room, smiling as though he belonged there. Sarah's voice was bright, almost too bright. "Mike, this is Daniel. He's a good friend of mine." I remember her hand lingering on his arm just a moment too long. Subtle, but not subtle enough. My stomach dropped, yet I forced my lips into a polite smile. "Daniel," I said, extending my hand, "nice to meet you." His grip was firm, confident, a man who knew he wasn't just a guest. He looked me directly in the eyes, almost daring me to see what was obvious. Sarah's eyes darted between us, sparkling with a strange sort of defiance. She wanted me to notice. She wanted me to know. That was the cruelest part. Most affairs are hidden, whispered lies in the shadows, locked phones, excuses about working late. But Sarah, she had chosen humiliation. She wanted me to look this man in the eye and shake his hand while she stood there, glowing with betrayal. Why? To test me? To break me? Or to watch me squirm while she flaunted her power? I didn't know then, but I knew one thing. The woman I married had just slit open the foundation of our marriage in one casual, calculated moment. "Daniel's been such a great help lately. He's always there when I need someone." My jaw tightened. She didn't say friend. She didn't say colleague. She said, "always there when I need someone." A sentence designed to wound. "Good to know Sarah has such reliable company," I replied, smoothly, hiding the storm inside. Daniel smirked, just faintly, a private acknowledgement between rivals. We sat. They laughed together, finishing each other's sentences, trading inside jokes I wasn't privy to. I sat across from them, sipping my drink, each word between them another needle in my chest. But while Sarah believed she was breaking me, something else was happening. Beneath the humiliation, beneath the fire in my gut, a colder force took shape, a clarity I'd never felt before. If this was the game she wanted to play, then I wouldn't be the fool, the victim, the broken husband she expected. No, I would be the audience, the observer, the quiet shadow in the corner collecting every slip, every smirk, every careless whisper. And when the time came, I wouldn't simply confront her. I would destroy her. That night, after Daniel finally left, Sarah climbed into bed beside me as though nothing had changed. Her breathing was calm, steady, almost smug. My back was turned to her, my eyes open in the darkness, staring at the wall. I listened to every inhale, every exhale, and realized something that made my blood run cold. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't guilty. She was satisfied. Satisfied that she had pulled one over on me, satisfied that I had smiled, shaken his hand, and played along like the blind husband she thought I was. That's when I made my decision. I would never give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. The next morning, I kissed her cheek before work, just as I always did. She smiled, expecting nothing less. Inside, my stomach churned at the thought of her lips, lips that had touched another man. But I smiled through it. At dinner, when she mentioned Daniel casually, "Daniel recommended this restaurant," or "Daniel told me the funniest thing today," I laughed along, as if I cared. Each time it was a test. Each time she watched me closely, waiting for the crack, the question, the explosion. I gave her nothing. I became a mirror, calm, agreeable, even friendly. Inside, I was memorizing every detail. The way her eyes lit up when she saw a text on her phone, the half-second pause before she answered my questions, as though editing her lies. The scent of cologne that wasn't mine, clinging faintly to her clothes when she came home late. I didn't confront, I cataloged. Because I understood something most betrayed husbands don't. Anger is predictable. Anger is weak. Anger gives them control. But silence? Silence unsettles. Silence builds. Silence sharpens into something far more dangerous. And my silence terrified her more than any outburst could have. One night, as she laughed at a message on her phone, I caught her glancing at me. She was waiting for me to ask, waiting for me to demand to see. I simply smiled. Something funny? Her fingers froze over the screen. The smile faltered, just for a second. That was when I knew my mask was working. The more I refused to fight, the more restless she became. The more restless she became, the sloppier her affair grew. And I was watching it all. The first rule of revenge is simple. Never act without proof. Sarah thought she was clever, juggling two lives with ease. But what she didn't realize was that her arrogance was a gift to me. She believed I was too naive, too trusting, too weak to see. And in that arrogance, she left cracks wide enough for me to slip through. At first, it was small things. Her phone lighting up with a late-night message. She would tilt the screen away, pretending it was nothing. I would pretend not to notice. But in that moment, I saw the name, Daniel. The next morning, I checked the call log on our shared phone bill. There it was, hours of conversations between them at midnight, stretching deep into the early morning while I slept inches away. I screenshotted the evidence, stored it in a hidden folder. Not for confrontation. Not yet. Then I began to study her patterns. Which nights she came home late, which excuses she leaned on, which lies she repeated word for word like rehearsed lines in a play. Every slip, every hesitation, every trace of guilt, I noted it down, a ledger of betrayal. When she thought I was asleep, I watched her, her fingers tapping out long, smiling messages under the blanket, the light of the phone glowing against her face, her lips curling into a grin reserved for him. That grin was what cut deepest. Not the act, not the secrecy, but the joy. She glowed for him in a way she hadn't for me in years. But even that pain hardened into focus, because now I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her shadow. And then came the first real opportunity. One evening, Sarah left her laptop open in the kitchen. She'd gone upstairs to take a shower. Normally, she was cautious, but arrogance makes people sloppy. I walked over, heart pounding, and clicked open the browser. There it was. Emails, photos, even calendar invites. Private little rendezvous hidden in plain sight. She had even created a secret email account just for Daniel. Sarah Freedom 89. Freedom. The word burned into me like acid. I copied everything. Sent it to a secure account only I had access to. Dozens of emails, hundreds of messages, photos, plans, proof upon proof. When she came back downstairs, towel around her shoulders, she smiled at me sweetly, almost mockingly. "You're quiet tonight." I smiled back. "Just tired." And for the first time, I realized I was no longer tired. I was awake. Wide awake. Sarah thought she was weaving her future in secret. But every thread she spun,
I was winding into a noose.
The thing about Daniel was simple. He believed he was winning. Sarah had given him access to my home, to my life, to me. And like most arrogant men, he mistook her recklessness for inevitability. He thought this would end in my collapse, my quiet disappearance. He thought I was too blind or too weak to see what was happening right in front of me. So, I decided to play along. The next time Sarah suggested Daniel come over, a casual dinner between friends, I welcomed him warmly. I even opened a bottle of wine I had been saving. Sarah blinked at me, surprised by how relaxed I seemed. Daniel ate, laughed, shared stories. I asked him about his job, his hobbies, even his past. On the surface, I was the perfect host. Underneath, I was learning everything I could about the man who thought he was taking my wife. And oh, did he talk. Arrogant men always do. I learned about his financial struggles, the debts he was hiding, the promotion he desperately wanted but wasn't qualified for, the little gambling problem he thought no one knew about. I tucked it all away. Each secret was a weapon waiting to be sharpened. When Sarah wasn't looking, I mirrored Daniel's mannerisms, his phrases, slowly, subtly. It unsettled him, though he didn't understand why. At times, I caught him watching me, frowning, as though something about me felt too familiar. That was intentional. I wanted him to feel me in his shadow. Sarah, meanwhile, thought I was blissfully unaware. The more I played the doting husband, the bolder she became. She smiled at Daniel across the table, laughed too hard at his jokes, brushed his hand when she thought I wasn't looking. And I let her. Every careless gesture was another nail in her coffin. But the real turning point came one Saturday. Sarah announced she was going out with her friends. I smiled, kissed her cheek, and told her to have fun. 2 hours later, I was parked across the street from Daniel's apartment, watching her slip inside. I didn't follow. Not yet. Instead, I picked up my phone and snapped a photo. Sarah's car in front of Daniel's building. Time-stamped, undeniable. Then another. Then another. Proof. Cold, brutal proof. But proof wasn't enough. I didn't just want evidence of betrayal. I wanted the kind of evidence that could end her. The kind that would not only strip her of dignity, but also of security, reputation, and the future she thought she was building behind my back. So I decided to stay patient. I let them think they were safe. Let them grow comfortable. Let them grow sloppy. Because betrayal is like rot. It spreads in silence, hidden beneath the surface, until one day the whole structure collapses. And I was waiting for the perfect moment to kick out the last support beam.
Sarah had always been good at lying, or at least she thought she was. She rehearsed her excuses, timed her smiles, even forced casual kisses as if to cover her tracks. But the thing about lies is that they're only strong if the other person is searching for the truth. And I wasn't searching anymore. I was watching, quietly, patiently. That silence became her undoing. It started small. She'd come home late, already holding a story in her mouth like a script. But instead of questioning, I'd simply smile and say, "Did you have a good time?" Her answers stumbled, too short, too detailed, too nervous. Then came the mornings. She'd glance at me over coffee, studying my face, waiting for a flicker of suspicion. But I gave her nothing but calm conversation. Weather. work, bills. The more normal I acted, the more abnormal she became. One night, she dropped her phone when a message came in. Daniel's name flashed on the screen for a split second. I pretended not to notice, but I caught the panic in her eyes. She laughed too loudly. "It's just work." "Of course," I said, sipping my drink. Her smile froze. She wanted me to push. She wanted a confrontation she could control. Instead, I let the silence sit between us until it became unbearable. That was the first fracture, and it spread quickly. At dinner with Daniel one evening, I noticed how restless Sarah was. She laughed at his jokes, but too quickly. She touched his arm, but her eyes kept darting at me. Daniel, arrogant as always, smirked at me like a man who believed he had already won. But even he began to notice Sarah's unease. "What's with you tonight?" he teased her, half joking. "Nothing," she snapped, a little too sharply. I hid my grin behind my glass. The silence was working. Later that night, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her whispering on the phone. "He's different," she said softly. "No, not suspicious. Just calm. Too calm. It's like he knows something." I closed my eyes, feigning sleep, savoring every word, because that was the beginning of it all. Paranoia. Paranoia eats faster than guilt. Sarah had introduced her lover to me, believing I would crumble under humiliation. Instead, I became the storm she could neither see nor predict. And the cracks in her confidence were only beginning to show.
Paranoia is a funny thing. It doesn't need proof, just the suggestion of it. And Sarah was already unraveling. All I had to do was feed the silence, nudge the edges, and let her own fear do the rest. It started with little comments. When she came home late, I'd smile and say, "Long night? Must have been important." When she texted under the covers, I'd chuckle and whisper, "You're always so busy." Nothing accusatory, nothing direct, just enough to remind her that I noticed. One night, as we sat at the table, I casually mentioned Daniel's name. "You know, Daniel's an interesting guy. Talks a lot about money." Her fork froze midway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "Oh, just how expensive everything seems to him. The debts, the gambling. It must be hard." I sipped my drink slowly. "I hope he's stable." I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I could feel her pulse racing across the table. The seed was planted. The next time Daniel came over, I leaned in just a little too close and asked him about a poker game I'd heard he was in. His face paled for just a second before he laughed it off. Sarah caught that flicker. I saw it, she saw it, and neither of us said a word. They left together that night, but the silence in their car must have been deafening. From then on, I began weaving threads of doubt. A comment here, a subtle glance there. I never accused, never exposed, just hinted, just enough to make Sarah question Daniel and Daniel question Sarah. One evening, I accidentally left my laptop open on the counter, a bank statement pulled up. A sizable transfer to an unknown account. When Sarah saw it, her eyes narrowed. She didn't ask me about it, though. She saved her questions for Daniel. That was the beauty of it. I didn't have to drive the wedge. They did it themselves. The cracks widened quickly. Sarah became sharper, more irritable. Daniel grew defensive, restless. Their secret world, once intoxicating, was now filled with suspicion. And through it all, I played the perfect husband. Warm, calm, loving. The more their world darkened, the brighter I shone in comparison. Because revenge doesn't always come in explosions. Sometimes it comes in whispers, soft, deliberate, and devastating. And my whispers were just getting started.
They say affairs burn bright because they live in the shadows. But what happens when the shadows are stripped away, and all that's left is raw daylight? The cracks were showing, and I was watching them splinter. Sarah grew short-tempered. She'd snap at Daniel over nothing, a late reply, a careless remark. Where there had once been stolen kisses and whispered promises, now there were arguments and accusations. I knew because I engineered them. When Daniel stopped by one evening, I made sure to greet him warmly, almost too warmly. "Daniel, good to see you, brother. Sarah was just telling me how much you've been struggling at work. Must be stressful." The look on Daniel's face told me everything. He hadn't told her, not yet. And just like that, the air between them shifted. Later, I heard them arguing in hushed voices outside by his car. Sarah demanded why he had lied. Daniel snapped back that he hadn't lied. He just hadn't told her everything. But the seed was already growing. The following week, Sarah came home pale and silent. She poured herself a glass of wine and downed it in one gulp. "What's wrong?" I asked gently. "Nothing," she muttered. But her hands trembled. She had seen something, heard something. Probably a rumor I had let slip to just the right ear, knowing it would drift back to her. Daniel's gambling debt, Daniel's shady business trip, Daniel's flirtation with another woman. All of it true, all of it timed, all of it landing exactly when Sarah's trust was weakest. The beauty of revenge is that truth is often sharper than lies. And Daniel, cocky as he was, didn't know how to handle Sarah's growing suspicion. He yelled more. He explained less. He made promises he couldn't keep. Their affair, once intoxicating, was becoming toxic. I saw it in Sarah's eyes, the same eyes that had once sparkled with triumph when she brought him into my home. Now they were heavy, bloodshot, rimmed with regret. And still, she stayed. Why? Because affairs are rarely about love. They're about escape. And when escape turns into a trap, it's too late to climb back out. That was my plan all along. To turn her freedom into a prison. To make Daniel, her chosen lover, the bars of her cage. And every day, those bars tightened. Because little did Sarah know, I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The cracks had widened. Now all I had to do was deliver the final blow. But a clean cut wouldn't do. No, this had to be a spectacle. A moment so devastating that neither Sarah nor Daniel could crawl back from it. I waited. I watched. And I chose my moment carefully. Sarah's birthday. She loved hosting. She thrived in the center of attention. And Daniel? He couldn't resist the spotlight either. Together, they believed they were untouchable.
until I made sure the world saw otherwise. The guest list was easy enough: family, friends, colleagues, people whose opinions mattered most to Sarah, people who would talk, people who would remember. The night of the party, everything seemed perfect. Music hummed low, glasses clinked. Sarah basked in compliments, glowing in her carefully chosen dress. Daniel arrived late, of course, flashing that smug grin, carrying a gift that made Sarah's cheeks flush just a little too red. I smiled. Perfect. Halfway through the night, as laughter echoed across the room, I tapped my glass. "Everyone," I said warmly, "before we cut the cake, I'd like to share a little surprise for Sarah. Something special." Phones rose instinctively. People loved surprises. The television flickered on behind me. At first, nothing but static. Then, video. Crisp, clear, undeniable. Hidden camera footage. Sarah and Daniel, together, in my home. Gasps filled the room. Glass shattered. A fork clattered to the floor. Sarah's face drained of color. Daniel cursed under his breath, his bravado vanishing in an instant. The video wasn't explicit. It didn't need to be. The intimacy, the whispers, the stolen touches were damning enough. And the timestamp in the corner? Proof that it had all taken place under my roof while I'd been out working late. Silence followed. Heavy, suffocating. Then the whispers began. "Oh my God, her own husband's brother? Did you see that?" Sarah staggered forward. "Mike, please." But I wasn't finished. "Sarah," I said calmly, "you introduced me to your lover. Tonight, I introduce him to everyone else." Daniel tried to speak, but the damage was done. The room had turned against them. Friends avoided their eyes. Family muttered in disgust. Even Sarah's closest confidants shifted away from her, as though betrayal itself were contagious. I didn't yell. I didn't rage. I simply let the truth burn them alive. By the time the video ended, Sarah was sobbing. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Daniel stood frozen, jaw clenched, as if weighing whether to run or fight. But it didn't matter. They were already ruined. The party ended in chaos. Guests slipped out with hurried excuses, some glaring, some pitying, all whispering. And when the last door closed, I looked at Sarah, broken, humiliated, betrayed by the man she betrayed me for. That was the shattering point, but not the end, because revenge isn't about one moment. It's about what comes after.
The morning after the party, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, leaves everything scattered and broken. Sarah didn't come down for breakfast. She didn't call. She didn't text. I didn't need her to. I already knew where she was, hiding, ashamed, replaying every moment of the humiliation I had orchestrated. Daniel didn't come back either. Friends reported he had vanished, driving hours away to escape the gossip and judgment. I sipped my coffee calmly, staring out the window. The world had shifted while I slept. Sarah had lost her social standing, her perfect image shattered before those whose opinions she had cared about most. Daniel had lost not only her, but any respect he had thought he commanded. And as I watched, a thought crystallized. Revenge isn't just about punishment. It's about control. It's about teaching them a lesson so deep that it changes their very sense of reality. Over the next few weeks, the fallout intensified. Sarah's colleagues whispered behind her back, rumors of her affair reaching even those she had considered allies. Family members avoided her calls, some subtly reminding her of the betrayal. Daniel's friends turned away from him, unable to ignore the public evidence of his deceit. Everywhere they turned, the truth followed, relentless and unforgiving. Yet I did not gloat. There was no need. Revenge, when precise, is self-evident. Its weight is in the consequences, not the spectacle. Then came the final touch. I arranged for Sarah's personal assets, the ones she had assumed she could claim in her absence, to be redirected legally, safely, beyond her reach. She discovered the truth only weeks later when bills began arriving and her accounts were inexplicably frozen. Panic replaced humiliation, and it was worse, far worse. Because by now, Sarah and Daniel understood. I hadn't just exposed them, I had undone their future, erased the safety net they believed was theirs, and ensured the shadow of betrayal would follow them everywhere. I walked past her office one afternoon, catching her reflection in the window. Her face, once radiant and confident, was pale and drawn. She avoided my gaze, but I could see it in her eyes: fear, regret, realization. No words needed. I didn't have to say anything. The damage was done. The lesson carved deep into their lives. I poured myself another coffee and smiled faintly, not in triumph, but in quiet satisfaction. Because the ultimate revenge isn't anger, it isn't violence. It's the precise, surgical dismantling of everything they took for granted. And in that stillness, I finally allowed myself to feel the weight lift. Sarah and Daniel had burned bridges they thought would never collapse. I simply watched the fire consume them. And as I stepped out into the crisp morning air, I knew something important. Betrayal is a poison, but revenge is a masterful art, and I had perfected it.